Yay. Okay, it says we're recording. Welcome everyone to episode 4 of Ask the Maestras of Defense. We have had several questions come in and several questions kind of churned up lately that we would like to discuss and talk about. As usual, our panelists will be having their video on or off as they desire. But for those of you who are not Maestras of Defense, we do ask that you please mute and turn off your video for the length of this discussion. As with that, I'm going to get into some introductions. I am Maestra Brigid. I am from Antir and the East and the Middle, but currently living in Antir, and I will be your moderator today. I'd like to start introductions and start with a special congratulations to Lilius of the East Kingdom. You were elevated 2 weeks ago?
When was I elevated? Two weeks ago? About that.
About that. Well, welcome, Lilius, and can you start off your introductions?
Sure. So, sorry, we have an old cat in our house who is yelling. It's not a baby. If you hear that, it's a cat.
It's fine.
So my name is Lilius de Sherrington. I am the newest Master of Defense in the East Kingdom. I actually chose the title Magistra instead of Master or Maestra. Let's see, I'm also the Kingdom Marshal of Fence in the East. So you may have seen me around doing that sort of thing. Are we going to say anything else in our introductions, or is that about what you need?
If you'd like to add anything else, you can. If not, no worries.
Okay. I do have 2 children. One of them is quite new. He's 3 months old. You see him here. So that's been taking up the bulk of my time during this quarantine.
Hello, little baby. What's the baby's name?
Kieran.
Well, hello, little one.
Yeah.
All right. Maestra Anna. Master Anna.
Hi, yeah, I go by either Master or Maestra. Anna Rema van Bovenbuttel. I've been out of the loop for a little while, had a serious case of life, so I haven't really done much in the last couple of years. I'm really excited to be back though. So yeah, I hope I can learn a lot and contribute in some meaningful way.
Well, welcome back, Anna. Friedeberg.
I'm Fredeborg van Katzenelnbogen. I'm from Ethelmark. I have 2 kids as well, so they're kind of late elementary school age now. And I don't even know, I guess it's 2.5 years since I've been elevated. So I was out of that for a while. I had a concussion, and then I started coming back, and then a pandemic hit. So yeah, I've not had a whole lot of time to do much SCA. I think I've done more SCA in the last month than I have in the previous year.
Well, virtual SCA has become quite a thing, but hopefully not for too much longer.
Agreed.
All right. Maestra Rosa.
Hello, I'm 2nd gen, so I've been in this since I was 5. I've been in Colantir, Drakkenwald, Midrealm, and now I live in Antir. Got elevated 2 years ago, January, Antir 12th night. My dad's also a Master of Defense, so we've been fighting since we were 10, since I was 10, since we were 10, wow. Dame Brigit was my mod who helped me get elevated, and I am the Kingdom Youth Rapier Marshal for Antir that got youth authorized under the age of 14 in Antir for the first time and have do nothing.
Yay, more youth fighters. All right. Nicolina.
Hi, I'm Nicolina from Artemisia, and I'm coming up on my first mod anniversary, so almost a year of this. I have no children, but I do have a cat.
And Illidor.
Hello, I am Master Illidor de Bedegrain. I am the premier Master of Defense of the West, and I currently more or less live in Ethelmark. and I have been, my mod-versary will be May 1st, and it will be 6 years.
Awesome. I think I'm at 5.
I think you are too.
I think I'm 1 year behind you. All right. So I would like to start with a little bit of old business. We had Illidor and I in a previous Maestra of Defense video had a question posed to us. I believe the question was, how did we get where we were, and how what advice do we have for people going forward? Is that about it, Illidor?
I think that was about it. I think I've used
the exact question.
Yeah, it's close enough, I think.
And I believe the overwhelming response was we succeeded through spite and stubbornness, and it was perceived that we were recommending other women follow suit with spite and stubbornness, and that is not the case. As my former cadet, Master Sorsha of the East, pointed out, that it is the job of every generation to make it easier on the next generation. And so what we would like to do is yes, it's true, we did survive where we got on grit and a bit of sisu, which is what happens after grit. We had to kind of fight our way through, but that's not what we're recommending. Everyone to have to suffer as we suffered. That's definitely not what we intended.
I absolutely do not want people to have to go through the same pain and suffering I went through to get here. I want to make the way easier. And anything I can do to make it better, faster, easier, smoother for any other women, non-binary, or minorities that would like to become a fencer or like to exceed in fencing, reach out to me and I will happily do what I can, as well as any other idea I can think of to try and make the way a little bit better. I can't promise it's gonna be a lot better, but I'm doing my utmost best to try to improve it.
Yes, we fight, we struggle, and then it gets better, and it will always eventually get better, is what I'm hoping for. So, did anyone else have anything they wanted to add to that topic? I'm not sure if our other panelists were here for that or felt like they needed to add to that.
Well, I did have a quick thought. The hard part about a question like that is that we, as the fighters coming, the up and coming fighters, you have a limited number of things that you can do about your own environment. So it's not terribly useful advice, but sometimes it does come down to, well, just keep being stubborn. The people that have control over that are the people who are on this round table and everyone who is contributing to the environment that others are living in. So we have the control to try to make that better for someone else.
And that's kind of what we're trying to do with this, give awareness to women's issues and try and elevate the discussion. Anyone else? Okay, then I'm gonna move on. So this week I blew up Facebook kind of everywhere with a question, and that question was coming back to our new normal in the after times. After this long pandemic, we have not, I've been in lockdown since January 2020 in a way, because I live in Kirkland, where all of the pandemic started in the US. So we didn't know how serious it was, and we did get formal lockdown in March, right? But we're coming up on a year of this, so that's been a while. And it's looking like, it's going to be at least well into late 2021, if not 2022, by the time we have enough vaccinations for herd immunity in the community, and getting all of that rollout, in a meaningful way. So the question I said was, coming into our new normal in the after times, whenever that is, whenever we can safely do this again, right? And we're gonna have this good restart of the SCA. We're gonna kick this all back off again, and that seems like a really great time for me to emphasize that we should be more encouraging and supportive of our women fighters, of our LGBTQ plus, of our minorities, of what can we do to make the SCA more inclusive, more welcoming, more encouraging, especially because, we're also looking at, how does this work with, with our mundane world, given that, our hobby filter of the SCA, sorry, I had to stop a video real quick. That did not work, there we go. Our hobby filter of the SCA trickles through from mundane. So there was even a suggestion of it's going to be harder on women to start back up normal life after all of this, because of all of the emotional support and care they've had to provide while trying to work from home and maintain their careers. So how can we as a community of fighters build a better community that's more supportive of women and minorities going forward? Who would like to start? Okay, Rosa.
I think the big thing is what we started with is the whole service thing. I do notice that women tend to marshal more and tend to step up more. I got told to stop servicing. I got in trouble for doing too much service and not being on the field too much. So I think the big thing is us as leaders is making sure we can help those people get on the field because we're already there, or telling the guys like, hey, pick up a stick, please help out on the field. Everyone's got to play and everyone's got to serve sometime, and we got plenty of marshals. We just do it.
I think this ties back into a previous conversation we had about how women are encouraged to follow the service track. One of the topics that we brought this up on is when fighters typically get to a good mid-level of fighting, that then we are like, okay, great, you're doing okay at fighting, you're on a good cruise control to learn how to fight better. Now you should maybe marshal more, learn an art, retain, do some work on an event staff, and round yourself out. And typically what guys hear is, sure, I'll do that when I'm done fighting. Like I'll fit it in. And typically the feedback we've gotten from women fighters is they hear that and they go, oh, I need to work on something new. Great. I will now follow this thing and do these things in addition to what I was doing, which tends to pull them off the field from getting pickups or fighting in extra tourneys or getting that training time in. And so we had noticed that there was a consistent sidetrack for fighters from Prowess Town, USA into the service track. And that was very difficult. Who else would like to add to this topic? We had a lot of conversation churned up. Illidor.
Sure, I have a clarifying question. Is this what are we doing, or is this what the community is doing?
I think it can be what can the community do? Like, what can our fighting community do to support women and minorities?
I have a lot. I'm going to go with an easy one very quick, and then I'm going to go with a harder one. The easy one we can do, like starting today, is we don't say that here. And by that, I mean anyone that disparages women in any way or minorities in any way, shape, or form. That includes calling someone a sissy, using other words, or like saying anything about pink, anything that is saying that the feminine in any way is bad, or minorities are bad in any ways or a lesser. The phrase to just use to them is to look them right in the eye and say, we don't say that here. And then move on. Right? Like, and if hopefully they will take the hint on that, but that's really like the big one. And I need for someone who is not a woman and is probably white to say these sorts of things, right? It's like we need to talk, it needs to be someone other than Elidor saying this all the time, right? This needs to be something picked up by the whole community to make sure our language is very inclusive and does not harm someone accidentally. As Oliver Wilde says, a gentleman never injures someone by accident. I believe that's the phrase, or insult someone by accident. That's right. The second one, and this one is harder. And this one, I think we should be doing more as a community. And I'm getting this from the Harvard Business Review on how to have a more diverse workplace, is that we should mentor more. So, and there should be a more, sorry, I got distracted there by noise. We should have we already have a mentoring program. And it's called Cadets or Scholars. We need to be more deliberate we need even to be deliberate, right? That our community is being served. It should not just be someone who looks just like you as the person that you want you as your cadet. You should be looking for people who do not look like you and people who probably need your help more than the up-and-comer who's got 10 other white scarves or mods looking at them as they're going to be like the next best thing since white bread. So what I really want you to do for our community, right, is to talk about mentoring people more and to start telling people, but the easier one is tell them to shut up or tell them politely. We don't say that here when they say bad things. All right, those are my two.
I think that's really important, especially in this day and age of social media, where we have people who just feel like they can say anything, is to reinforce inappropriate things that are said in public forums. We don't say that.
I also want to add, just because we're talking about social media and I have more than one hat, that if someone is saying things that are inappropriate for the SCA, your outlet should be your person you should go to about this should be your Kingdom Seneschal, hands down. Just go straight to them. Do not stop it, go, because social media is not private. It is a public forum. And if people are saying this, it is just the equivalent of them saying it, if not worse, because they might have a bigger audience that's saying it at an event.
That's true. How does that fall under the bullying clause, by the way? How do Kingdom Seneschals handle that?
Each Kingdom Seneschal handles it differently. I can tell you how Athelmark handles it because I'm the Kingdom Seneschal for Athelmark. And that is anything regarding bullying goes directly to me as Kingdom Seneschal. And I investigate it at that point and then act appropriately after that. So anything from talking to the person because they may have just said something out of turn, or it might have been something minor, to asking the person not to be a part of the SCA anymore.
All right. Master Anna.
Thanks. I kind of wanted to circle back to something that Elidor had said earlier about the way that we look for people, the way that we connect with people who are not our students or aren't our cadets. And just one of the things that I noticed really helped, and honestly, it helped me get to where I am, is being vigilant, looking around. And this isn't something that has to come from the top. And literally anybody involved in the rapier community can do it, which is to spend a little extra time at your practice or at the next event and look around at who's being ignored. Because people who are getting ignored have sort of a twofold issue. First of all, they're not getting any attention. They're not getting any motivation for doing better or doing more or being more involved. And there's often a good reason why they aren't being noticed, why they aren't being involved, which is something may have happened. It may have been a single conversation with somebody where they felt marginalized or pushed aside. And for people like, for me, I'm a horribly anxious human being. For somebody like me, one time can be enough for me to not leave, but just sort of withdraw enough to disappear.
Yeah. I saw a really good comment about, how one, we don't see, we reinforce to people that that's not done, but also, if people are being ignored, if they're not seen. One of my friends actually made a really good post about, especially practices, like how can you help at practices? And one of the things is that, like, if you don't have a structured practice, if people are just, if there's no one taking control, and it turns into a social hour, like, right? And then it turns into cliques, and then people are being excluded and not included. And, being that person who's the good interface to newcomers, or, people who've been around forever alike, who goes over and says, hey, let's fight, let's be productive, let's, where are you at, what are you working on, and how can I help you get better. Structured practices help people not get ignored. It helps people not fall through the cracks. And one of the other things that is on my little checklist of things I wanted to bring up is also SCA time. Starting things on SCA time genuinely hurts women to a very great extent. Often ones who have childcare responsibilities, they might have childcare arranged for X amount of time. If the tournament starts an hour late, like, they might have to leave the tournament early, or they might not be able to have their childcare option now, or whatever that situation is. It's really inconvenient, and we need to really stop making things start on SCA time in especially at events.
I
Would
wanted to
anyone
come back
else?
to talking about getting allies, getting people who are going to help us, just because if I'm struggling to have childcare and if I'm struggling to get out on the field, it's very hard for me to help other people. And so the other thing that falls into is, if we're the only ones doing all this work, we're once again basically picking up all the service that we need other people to help us pick up. And so it's really important to build the community of everyone who's going to help.
It's especially very hard for people who don't have a household behind them, right? So if you not only have children and you have a small group, you might also be the person in charge of making sure your child gets fed, or you and your partner get fed, or whatever happens, or you might have to leave early to deal with court or whatever it is. It's very helpful to have those allies who can help pitch in.
So a quick comment from the chat regarding SCA time was perhaps we should start having bells ringing out the time at events as a reminder.
I love that.
That could be helpful.
Oh
I always like the herald going around site being like, oye, oye, it's now 9 a.m. Like, that was always kind of cool to me.
Yeah, where would we get bells?
Nicolina, you look like you wanted to say something.
Oh, no, I was just saying how awesome the bells idea was.
Like, logistically, how would that work? Like, where would we get bells, something big enough that would chime? I mean, I don't have one lying around.
I think more the idea is like a herald or something, or someone would be notifying people. Yeah, we aren't quite the carol of the bells going on.
Small children with Home Depot bells running around.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. Give them something to do.
Got a Chuck Wagon triangle, maybe. I don't know. Lilius had her hand up.
Yeah, I think specifically in terms of returning, we have an opportunity. I'm looking at specifically as the Kingdom Rapier Marshal of how do we get people back practicing and fencing in a safe way. And part of that is taking a step back from that competitive mentality and acknowledging that nearly all of us is going to be rusty. We need to start slowly. We need to go over the basics again. We need to make sure that we are all still good with our calibration and things like that. And those things, that's an opportunity to identify the people who have not had the opportunity to learn those fundamentals as everyone else is sort of reviewing them, and bring them up to the same level that the rest of us are trying to reattain. And I'm hoping that there will at least be a temporary culture shift away from the competitions. And we're more of a, we're all in this together, getting all of us back up to speed. We want to be careful. Nobody wants to get hurt. Nobody wants to hurt anybody else. So maybe we can work together a bit more than we have before. And I'm looking at how, from a policy standpoint, as the KRM, like, I can enforce that to a certain degree, but also there's also going to be a culture shift requirement that I think everyone at like the local level at your practice can emphasize to those people. If you're the marshal in charge, or just one of the marshals there, like, hey guys, let's all do these drills together, or let's all check our calibration together. And I think that might be an easier way to include people who are generally or often marginalized. If everyone is working on these basics, and it doesn't feel weird to be asking someone for help to help with the basics.
Yeah, I was I was actually talking about this, and we were talking about maybe obviously there's going to be a very serious safety concern with people coming back. Real quick, I did mean to mention, I'm sorry, Lilius, I am not always super technologically advanced, and I briefly paused the recording by mistake during your question. So in the recording, there will be a slight cutoff, and I was like, oh shit. So it's fixed. Also, that's my one swear word for the recording, so it's PG-13, we're good. Sorry.
We can make it real quick.
Someone pointed out in the comments too that conditioning is going to be an issue too. Like, we're going to be physically out of shape, and also the possibility of reauthorizations. The way it works in the East, we're going to have at least a quarter of the people are going to have expired auths anyway, so they're going to have to do a reauth. And I think I heard a rumor that some kingdoms are reauthorizing everybody because it's been so long, but I don't think that's on the table for us.
I don't have an authorization right now.
I asked the Earl Marshal of our kingdom, because I'm actually genuinely concerned about safety moving forward. And I said, hey, how can we make everyone reauth? Because this is an unprecedented situation. We have never in the history of the SCA had this happen where all of the SCAs stopped for like a year, possibly two. We don't know how long this is going to last with the new variants. And so if we have people away for this long, I'm genuinely concerned about the safety that we present to our communities. I've had a few concussions myself. My last one was pretty bad, and my Penzic one was pretty bad. My last one, I still had post-concussion symptoms for many months afterwards. And so that's a concern I have moving forward. And what do we do about safety, and how do we encourage better safety in our community? One of the other recommendations, other than asking everyone to reauthorize, and I honestly don't think that's too big of a question to ask. I think it's a reasonable thing to ask, but that's just my opinion, and I'm only a marshal in the field. And I know a lot of the questions are more about like the logistics of the minister of the list, right? Like, if we have to re-auth 1,200 rapier fighters and 3,500 rattan fighters and this many archers and this many equestrian, like, that's a lot to do and a lot of cards to send out. That might just need a very large team of volunteers to help pitch in. And I honestly believe in a society that prides itself on volunteers and service, we could press enough people into helping out that would not be as big of a deal as everyone's making it out to be.
So,
Lilius, your input on that?
You
raised your hand, so.
No, that I was trying to get it away from the baby. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I think Illidor, then Friedeberg.
So super quick, two things. So one of the comments that we had in here is that a standard authorization? So the question was, should we do that as a standard authorization? I do want to kind of hit just foot stomp this to make sure that I want to summarize what I think I just heard. I think what we're trying to say is we have right now is probably the best time for us to try and have to focus on training, to make sure that people are getting man, woman, non-binary, everyone is getting good training. This would be the right time to do that. And also as a part of that, everyone should be doing it because we're all going to have to start getting authorization. So that could be something that at every practice is that we work on having a structured practice. And that structure does not mean that one person controls the practice, just that there is a structured practice to make sure that everyone, including those people that are ignored or marginalized, gets time. And that we should also have, and this would be a good time to enforce that because we're all lame at the moment. We're all terrible at the moment. we all need to improve because we're all rusty. That's what I was trying to say. Did I get that correctly?
I believe so. Real quick on that. One of the points I've been trying to make across in some of these videos has been one of these kind of systemic problems about women getting training is typically men who are typically faster and stronger or quicker to pick up competitive sports tend to get more attention because they seem to be getting it faster or on the right track faster. And this is kind of one of those ways that due to unconscious bias, women get less training than men. And is that they kind of get what's left over after the men get the attention and the training that we are, as a community are giving to the athletic, excitable, competitive people first. Friedeberg.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, I don't think anybody should be fighting in a tournament in their first or even second or probably even third event back, which means the task of having some sort of authorization for everybody, some sort of safety check essentially, isn't as overwhelming in a sense that we should be holding, big practices for quite a while. And that means that if we come up with a good system, either at local practices or even events, that is kind of a refresher course for everybody that can then be followed by authorizations, I think that's not an overwhelming task.
I feel like maybe the thing you guys do at Ethelmark, Adult Swim, where you have everyone come out for like a really big practice. That seems like it could almost be like something really helpful, like coming back out of this, if we're able to just do a few large practices and get people back into things, but slowly. I know that, sorry, I got distracted by the comments. Continue. Who is next? Okay, great. Sorry, I got sidetracked. One of the things, you do bring up a great point that was on my list, Friedeberg, which was, I saw people saying, maybe we shouldn't have more than one fight thing per event coming back for a while. Like if you're having a tournament, don't stack the deck with like 3 or 4 tournaments because we're all excited to get back. Like don't push people to want to try and fight through the whole day because that might be very unsafe getting back, right? Like maybe we start out with only 1 tournament starting back up. I'm also kind of afraid of like what happens with the Pennsic melees. Like I'll be honest, looking at this, if Pennsic, it's the first event back, Pennsic usually the lens by which I hold everything that could go wrong. I'm sorry, Illidor, it's true. But in terms of calibration, in terms of people fighting, a lot of people, especially people who haven't been to Pennsic, don't really understand when I explain we don't have time when a melee starts to check everyone's auth card or make sure everyone's been inspected. We kind of hope that you and your buddies are all honest and You know, you look around and see if people have stickers on their mask, and you hope that's real, you know. But you can just have people roll up and walk onto the field, and that's scary in a way, you know.
So we should, rather than when we first get back, not worry about winning, and we should worry more about training. And that will help women as well as men. I think it's
How do we go about?
Oh, sorry.
Just,
Anna.
it's a wonderful idea, and you know, in an ideal world, that's exactly what would happen. But how do we? And I don't just mean the Maestras. I mean, like, we and the people here who have tuned in for this, go about convincing the tourney-minded, competitive people that we need to step back and focus on training at events. Because I see that as a huge challenge.
One of the things that we've been kind of talking about a little bit, we haven't made a decision. It kind of depends on when we come back, but there's certain tournaments that, I mean, Crown Tourney would be a prime example of just like, there is no way people are not going to be completely crazy competitive over it, just the nature of it. And so we're looking at like, you know what, we're probably not going to have any of the big illustrious tourneys right off the bat. We're going to wait 6 months at least so that we don't have people who are just barely coming back to Rapier, this be their first thing in 2 years, and hurt themselves or each other trying desperately to win that.
I think Gwyneth from the Mid-Realm said it in chat. I'll put something. Peer pressure. We're peers. We're just going to pressure everyone. Don't have tourneys. Just, that's the easy way to do this for everyone right now. Admittedly, I say that, and Crown Tourney is probably going to be one of the first things that happen, which is probably not going to be great. But really, yeah, I know every kingdom's like that right now. But really, for the Rapier community, since we do not have Crown, we should put a lot of peer pressure on we should focus on training, getting together, knocking the rust off, teaching each other, and not focusing on tourneys. So that's what I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask all of the Maestras here and all of the peers that are either watching us now or watching us in the future, over the summer or whenever we open back up, put pressure on people not to have tournaments, not have big tournaments, not have big melees. Or if you're going to have melees, it's practice. It's not for an actual thing. Like, let's just get together and train each other for a while. What do you all think of that?
I mean, that is something that could come down from the Society Marshal or the Earl Marshal. Legislatively, the only issue I immediately think of is that our kingdom fencing tournament is in kingdom law, so that wouldn't be a decision I could make to not allow it.
Yeah, that's super. So hey, Kingdom Seneschal here, you just get a waiver. You get a waiver for kingdom law. It's super easy. We have a form for it. All you have to do, really, all you have to do is ask your Kingdom Seneschal that you need a waiver for kingdom law, and they can do it. Anything that is not kingdom law, baronial law, or that sort of thing, you as Kingdom Seneschal, I as Kingdom Seneschal, or anyone else who's a Kingdom Seneschal can simply give the locals a waiver that they don't have to follow that policy. So, but when it comes to our kingdom policies, you can just go and say, hey, we need this waiver, and the board of and the Society Seneschal, and then the board of directors will waive it for you. And I'm sure if you're like, hey, I know this is in law that we have to do this, just ask for the waiver and tell them why, and they will probably give it to you.
Yeah, chat points out you do need the buy-in from the royals if you don't want to get in hot water.
I talk to my royalty all the time, and I would explain why, and they would probably agree with me. Most of the royalty that I know of and have dealt with stuff like this have been, particularly right now, particularly in the pandemic, we're all understanding that this is not the normal times, and we can't go 100% as soon as the doors are open.
It's really interesting because several kingdoms are going to open up at different times in different ways. So
Are we still on the topic of things we can do to help the community?
I think Brigitte's trying to speak, but we can't hear you. Nope.
hello?
No. You're
Oh,
having your
baby's upset.
microphone weird. Oh no.
Okay.
Do you want to type it and we'll just read it really quickly?
Colin with your phone.
Oh no. Following up with my phone actually wouldn't be a terrible idea. Someone else.
We have no idea what you're saying. Zero idea. Okay, you're
I
gonna.
might have been reaching for a phone, but I can't tell.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. While she does that, I have another couple of quick ones. The first one is armor, making sure that we have armor for women. That is a big one that has come up multiple times. Is any commentary on armor?
Well, it is a good opportunity now, again, while we aren't fighting, to spend that time. Those of us who have the resources and the motivation to make that armor or to acquire it over the break.
Testing.
Yeah, I saw multiple people commenting, different armor for different body types, different shapes, different sizes, different sizes. I think that's a great idea.
One of the easiest ones we can do, I mean, this is super easy, is having a pair of small or extra small gloves in your your loaner gear. Any other quick things that we want to add that would help out the community?
Testing.
I know I try to carry an extra small gorget, just general things that people A, forget, and B, sometimes it's hard to find at merchants because smalls aren't there.
Right.
My neck and my body frame is not a typical big person frame, so I have to make sure when I get armor, it's made to my size. So yeah, I try to, because usually I have smaller stuff, I carry my extra gear that I obtain, or we have Master Donatello that grabs gloves from work because they're disposable, but they're leather. They can just write them off. So they're good welding gloves, but you can get any sizes, so we throw them in loaner gear to make sure we have the gloves, we have the gear to kind of match all the sizes. But sometimes just having a couple extra gloves and gorgets in your own gear helps out a lot.
Excellent.
Well, and just
Testing.
being size inclusive in general, because not all women are extra small. There's our plus size women and plus size people in general need gear too.
Agreed. Yeah, having a variety of more gear. Anyone?
Another quick
here's
thing
us.
that we could do.
Yes, we can hear you now, Brigitte.
Yes.
Oh, thank goodness. I was going to go crazy.
Right.
Okay.
Lilius, though, you were going to go.
Oh, just another quick thing we could do. I'm thinking back to the comment about the changing rooms. Some of us, I think, have lost practice spaces during this break, but if you know that you still have the same practice space, you can go and take a look at how that space is described in your event announcements or your practice announcements and make sure that it has that information in there, like there are single stall changing rooms, or there's places for people to go. And in general, I think it helps people who might be anxious about coming to a practice for the first time to know what to expect. So even if you don't have those kinds of bathrooms, just say, this is what we've got, so you can be prepared when you get there. This is what the space is like. This is about how big it is. Here are the amenities that we have. It just occurred to me, we don't really have those details in our list of practices. So it's something you could take this time during the break to scrub your list of practices and make sure it has as much detail as you can provide for people.
Another thing that, am I back?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. That is so weird. Another thing that was brought up that was kind of like a simple thing. Sorry, my ADHD just dropped what I was going to say because I was writing something down. Tag back in. Ilidor?
Oh, you want me to say something? Yes, tag that again. All right, so one of the things that, going back to training, so one of the things in the class Lady Navane of Atlantia does, which is called Half of Heroes, is she kind of goes into explaining the physical differences between men and women and how they may train differently. And so I want to recommend that, like taking classes and understanding how my arm is different than a man's arm is going to be very useful for you as a trainer. Any other commentary along those lines? Wait, Brigitte remembered.
I just remembered what I was going to talk about.
Okay,
I'm so
good.
excited. Sorry, it's been a really long week for me. For those of you who know me, I've been having quite a week. So my brain's not totally there. One of the things that I'm genuinely thinking about coming back to, oh, I do remember the thing I was mentioning earlier, real quick. Someone was mentioning getting pronouns added to their OP so that when you can get your information for a lot of the lists, because a lot of the lists for formal tournaments are going to pull up information out of the OP to get the order of march. I thought that would be a really nice thing to be able to get pronouns in your OP. So that seems like an easy thing that we can do during this downtime to be more welcoming for minorities and people moving forward. So that was one of the things that I wanted to mention was the pronoun suggestion that I saw. And I think it's a really great idea. And I think it's a really simple way to really, enhance our ability to be inclusive. Friedeberg.
I just wanted to add to practice spaces. Something I've had happen twice now is groups did not check if their practice spaces were inclusive for children. And I've actually gone to a practice with my children and the space has told us that they won't allow children there. So that's also something that's really important for people to watch out for. But also if you can add more information to your practice space, information in the announcement as to, things that parents might need to watch out for if they bring their kids so that they're prepared. For example, sometimes we have unheated spaces and if you're fighting, that's fine. If you bring your young kid who's sitting on the side, that's not so good. So just kind of keeping that in mind is important.
And would a mention of like parks with playgrounds, would that be useful information to have ahead of time?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
My husband is laughing in the background to say yes.
Absolutely. One of the other things I wanted to bring up as part of how can we be more encouraging as we come back from this terribly long break that we're going to have, this COVID winter, as it were. We're going to get hurt. Like there are people who are going to be weekend warrior. They're not going to be in shape to fight. People are going to go out and press themselves a little bit too hard. We're going to end up with a lot more sports injuries than we had before any of this stopped, just because of how long we are away and how abruptly everyone's going to be so excited to get back. And trust me, I'm so excited to see you all. I'm a very lonely extrovert, very lonely extrovert who feels very introverted these days. But one of the things that was brought up to me recently was how a woman that I know who is, has awards in the rapier community, and she went through a very difficult struggle with her health and a difficult struggle with injuries and whatnot. And when she was coming back, people were like, yeah, you're probably not going to be decided for the mod because you can't fight right now. Instead of, if it was a guy, typically the response is, supporting, like, hey, you'll get back into it. Hey, you'll be right back there or whatever. It was really just very misogynistic bedside manner that was really terrible and rude. And so I think, moving forward, understanding that we are going to have injuries, we're probably going to strain tendons and, do terrible things to our bodies, just trying to get back up to things. I mean, I know I will be going to the gym as soon as I can to make sure I'm in physical conditioning to fight the way I fight. But you know, when people do get injured, one, we need to make sure that, you know, there's a difference between hurt and injured. And you can be hurt, you know, you can just overdo it one day and that's fine. But there's a difference between hurt and injured. And I spent a lot of the 90s and the aughts when I was in pain, just fighting through the pain. I'm gonna go through it because I don't want people to see me as weak. I don't want people to think that I am complaining or I'm weak. And so I would fight through the pain more often than you know, other people. And that has led me to have terrible chronic injuries that still plague me to this day because I was too stubborn to understand the difference between hurt and injured. And so I think one of the things we need to do is really make sure, you know, as we come back, obviously people aren't just shoving themselves through sports injuries in order to get back to playing, but also we need to make sure that when women and minorities are sidelined through being hurt, that they are not left as the ignored group that is left behind. And that we make sure to check in with them and make sure that, you know, we help them through, you know, getting back into fighting slowly. Obviously, I always advocate for professional words.
Doctors.
Professional doctors, professional rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is the word I was looking for. I always advocate for listen to your doctor, listen to your physical therapist, listen to all that. But, you know, we as a community who are able to do drills with people, help them work through things slowly, help them, you know, get back up into fighting. You know, we should be cheerleaders for, you know, the people that are often, as Anna put, ignored. Like, we need to make sure people who feel marginalized and ignored are not sidelined with the, I have to say it, inevitable injuries that are going to come out of us coming back from this long break. Nicolina.
And normalize, ideally with example, warming up properly, which the SCA in general tends to be horrible about.
That's a really good point, is that we are bad about warming up, and people tend to think, oh, warm up is just a quick couple of fights. I'm just gonna go over here and do a quick couple fights and just do that. And to me, like, that's just something that plays with my adrenaline dump and is not helpful at all. Like, as opposed to actually stretching and making sure I, you know, start slow and listen to my body and make sure I don't do things that hurt it, right? Ilidor, I think you had a thing.
Well, we have two hands up already, so I don't know. Rosa, Anna,
Rosa, sorry. I missed the little icon thingy. It's on my screen.
Anna can go first. It's been up a while, so.
Oh, Anna.
Hey,
Anna or Anna first?
It's Anna.
It's
Anna.
Anna. I am so sorry.
German. It's okay. It's all right.
Anna.
Well, what I want to say circles back quite a ways, back when we were talking about Nivane. I know Gwen also runs a really good class that's targeted towards lady fencers. But so do you mind if I go back and address something there? Okay, so as the T representative or a T representative from the LGBTQ plus alphabet, I think it's really important that we educate ourselves a little bit about some vocabulary. In particular, a couple of terms that we should probably all be including are AFAB and AMAB, AFAB and AMAB. That's assigned female at birth and assigned male at birth. The reason is, if you have, say, trans women in your ladies fencer class and you talk about how women's elbows work this way and women's hips work this way, all of a sudden you kind of end up sort of alienating us. Because it's like, okay, well, then I'm not a woman, so you don't see me as a woman. So how does that work? So it's probably just a good thing to like spread around, educate people on this sort of thing so that we are a little more inclusive with our language.
Great. Could you give me maybe a little bit of example, like if I was to be more inclusive by saying AFABs would have an elbow that comes in? And would that be how I
It would be AFAB people.
AFAB people?
Mhm. Because this is something like, it's going to apply both to cis and also to trans men. They're going to have the same physiological things that we have to bear in mind. So yeah, AFAB people.
Thank you. That's I learned something new today, and I've actually been struggling with trying to figure out how do you say ladies of various types.
And I just want to make this like clear, not that I speak for all trans people out there or anything, but I am incredibly comfortable talking about transgender issues. It's one of those things like as soon as you get your trans card, you have to like get a master's level understanding of how to explain your existence to other people. But I am particularly very comfortable in talking about this sort of thing because I am both transgender and I have a sports medicine background, and generally just choose to be instructive about things like this.
Thank you. That was very good feedback to give us. I really appreciate that.
Everyone in chat is also lighting up and saying thank you, by the way. That was really good.
That's literally the first time I've heard that. So I'm very excited to have learned something new today that can be more inclusive. Rosa.
Sorry, I didn't teach you the terminology. Anyways,
Yeah.
little plug in with little plug in with all of that. Since I'm part of the DEI Council of Ontario, reach out to them about the pronoun stuff. We, as a trans woman, I've been trying to work with them to how do we apply the pronouns for like baron and baronesses and stuff on baronial level, not just kingdom level. There's been other things talking about like safe spaces or spaces for practices. Like I have people that can't come to my practice because there's no bathrooms. So kind of like the whole part of the diversity, anyways, DEI, can't think right now.
Diversity, equity, inclusion.
Thank you. Wow, I cannot say that middle one. But we're kind of like trying to be aware of these issues. Like when I wrote the youth rules, we actually try to keep gender out of the rules. And this is like the first set of rules that me and Althea, our actual now Earl Marshal, we're trying to look like when it came to protection, we didn't want to call it male protection. We needed to be like male anatomy or something. Like we had, I forget what words we used, but we try to keep them more inclusive because we were realizing as the rules were getting rewritten that we're trying to take gender out of it, going off with the AFAB and the AMAPs, because especially with a kid that's just learning about their gender and stuff and getting into youth fighter and talking about minorities and trying to include them, we don't want them to feel like I had weird questions to local marshals like, what do we do about all this and type of things and stuff right before the pandemic happened. So pronouns have been, they're actually in Ontario right now, pronouns are talked about because of me, because they kind of brought them up, but I've been kind of pushing it and on top of it. And also with other minorities about being ignored, introverts don't talk a lot. This is why I took on Brigitte as my maestra.
I adopt introverts.
Because that this is why my dad and I also created the early bird tourney at Penzic. We know people stay on the sides and aren't willing to just randomly talk to people like Brigitte. And so we created an event, a tournament where we created socialism, a social type of concept of it, where we forced people to talk to each other. And since it was our tourney, we kind of forced people to talk to each other because we're like, oh, you're not fighting? Well, I know that person. You guys go fight. So we kind of made an uncomfortable situation a little bit more comfortable because we're like, you don't have to choose who to fight, but we'll choose for you. So we kind of set up systems in place to understand people can be introverted, part of the neurodiversity stuff, ADH brain, anxiety, depression. I have all of it probably. That these go into my head on how can I include these people because they get distracted or they don't know who to talk to and stuff. So you kind of have to kind of lead sometimes in it, but sometimes you gotta just to kind of know what the people need.
Okay, Ilidor, and then we're getting a little bit long, so I do want to touch one more thing.
All right,
Ilidor,
just
go.
super quick, came from chat, and to also like kind of hat tip with Rosa said, like a foot stomp, more basically inclusive or friendly tournaments, including, they said, bear pits, especially for women, people who have time issues, right, with due to childcare. A bear pit is a great tournament where you can attend and do as much as you can and then leave or come in or come out as necessary. So a bear pit tourney was one of the other suggestions. So just thinking more about like you being more inclusive when you design a tournament. That was it.
One of the things that we also have found at Penzic for the Lady Rapier tournament is round robins, but split them up enough that they're not over encumbering, so that people can fight their fights as they need to, and if they need to step away, then they can just come back and catch up. It does allow some flexibility that we've discovered has been very helpful. So anyone else on this topic? Okay. One of the things I did want to touch on, we have been asked, so we're talking about kind of what the community can do. We've also been asked kind of what can white cis heterosexual males kind of actively do to assist us in this endeavor to have a goal of being more inclusive. What can we ask of them? One of the answers to this that I wanted to bring up, because I very famously got in a small spat with someone over this week, is, don't say there isn't a problem. Like, we don't need more people pretending there isn't a problem. There is, and acknowledging it is helpful. And if we are the ones that have to say there's a problem and we don't get support for that, then it's just kind of further perpetuating the systemic situation where we have women who are struggling and minorities who feel excluded and people who feel ignored or shoved into the service track because they are not the newest, hottest, quickest, 20-year-old guy that showed up, right? I'm not going to belabor that too much. If someone else wants to tag in, Friederberg.
I think it's telling when people have a very quick response of, well, I'm not part of the problem. If you're not part of the problem, you should be reaching out and also asking other people if what you're doing is sufficiently supportive, but also as well, reaching out to other people and giving them suggestions. For example, here's what worked well for me. Like if we really need more people who, if they don't see themselves as a problem, are actually doing something to reduce the problem overall versus being proud of their corner of the world, because there are a lot of corners of the world where not only is it a problem, it's a really big problem, and those corners of the world need more people who can help.
I believe all it takes is for one good person to just not speak up, right? We do need people to speak up, and if you're not part of the solution in a way, you're just contributing to part of the problem, I think. Anna.
Thanks. So maybe this is a kind of a pop psychology sort of thing, but there's some truth to it, in that women tend to do things because it's expected of us, and men tend to be very praise-driven and praise-motivated. One of the things that we can do to help those typical like white cis heterosexual men who want to help out and do stuff, because I think that the vast majority of people want to be good people. I mean, a lot of us get into like fencing, all of us get into fencing because we want to be superheroes, stuff like that. And a simple bit of encouragement, and it might seem a little bit lopsided, is to take the effort to praise the people who are really doing it. Like, find the people who called out that one jerk and took them to task and go, hey, this guy really stepped up when we needed somebody. People see that and they see the example, broadly publicized example, and they want to be that example.
I think that's a really good perspective. Support and appreciate our allies, and make sure they know they're supported and appreciated for supporting us in a way. Did I summarize? Okay. Anyone else wants to add to this? What do we think that generally the white fighter dude bro population can do to help us? Dude bro is a terrible word. Let me rephrase that. Just what can we get help with? Lilius.
Sorry.
So good.
Do not apologize.
Practice that inclusive language that we were talking about and be seen to be using it. Specifically, we in the East, when we adopted the recent fencing rules updates from the society level, we did a scrub of our rules. We got rid of all of the gender non-neutral language, the questions about armor protection when you're doing an inspection. A lot of even my experienced marshals struggle with how do I ask the question without using gender? How do I ask if you're wearing the right protection if I can't, if I can't reference your gender? And so talking and reminding them and making sure that they are using the right words, and also that they ask the question the same. So the question I'm talking about is the way we've decided to ask it is, are you wearing rigid protection as required by your anatomy? So we're not asking you what your anatomy is, and we're not making assumptions about what it is, but we're reminding you that you need to be wearing it. And if you need to know what you have to wear, like if you're a new fencer and we say, well, if you have a penis or testicles, you need to be wearing rigid protection. And that should be said to everyone. There should be no assumptions about what you have. And even like the biggest, manliest dude should be asked that, it should be said that way to them in front of everyone to normalize that question. So it's not just, oh, I'm not really sure what you have, so I'm going to ask it to you in a weird way. It should be the same for everybody. And and the people, the white cis dude bros, should be modeling that for everybody.
Don Diego helpfully gave me a better way to phrase that in my terrible phrasing. He gave me the better phrasing of what can the majority to do to help out the minority. And thank you very much for that rephrasing. I appreciate that. Nicolina, did you have your hand up?
Sort of, but yeah, I did have a thought. One thing that has really impressed me is when I see male teachers or majority teachers talking to their majority students about how to be more inclusive to minorities. And because it's something that kind of gets forgotten or just not brought up unless one person in the student-teacher relationship is a minority. Like, no, we need to be talking about this.
I think that's a good point. Ilidor?
So what I really need for everyone to do is to understand that this is a systemic problem. No one is calling you a misogynist, right? Or you specifically a misogynist. What we're trying to say is the system was built by white heterosexual men, and that who's the system is built for. And if you are not that, the system is very hard against you. So I need everyone to recognize that when we're talking about how hard it is for anyone who is not white, not heterosexual, and not a cis man, this is what we're talking about here. We're talking about how this system was built. And so because of that, what I want to ask people is, I want to tell you like straight up, we don't need allies anymore. We need agitators. We need people who are going to agitate for change. And if you're just going to sit back and say, tell me what to do, that's not helpful. We have been telling you what to do for a long time. We now need for you to pick up the ball and run with it.
I believe one of the best comments I got related and attached to this question was, it's pretty messed up for the majority to expect the minority to do all of the work.
Yep.
We have been saying this. We've been saying what we need to do. This is our 4th episode now. And we're kind of rehashing a little bit of previous data, but we do need agitators for change. We need that help. Friedeberg.
I just wanted to kind of point out that I think the question, what can I do, is entirely too broad, because we could probably talk about that for hours. However, if you see something, ask a specific question like, hey, at my practice, I noticed this, what can I do to help? Or if you see something and you don't know if you're the right person to help resolve that issue, find someone to talk to so that you can get someone else. So you don't just become the observer and then don't follow through. So I think it's the specific questions that are really going to help us solve the problems.
I think that's a really good point. Specific questions do help. And if you're like, what can we do to make our practice more inclusive? Like, for instance, like mention childcare options or potential problems with the site that might be difficult for people. I think that one of the interesting things, and you know, not to super name out names, but when I posed my initial question of, in the after times, what can we do to make things more inclusive and better for everyone, so we don't leave people out in the cold in this restart. And one of the problems I saw was, you know, I posted to like 12 different groups, and one of those groups amongst the 12 was Ask the Chivalry. And one of the responses I got was, how dare I come there and berate the order? And I was like, good sir, I am not here to berate anyone, and this isn't about your order, but really you're exhibiting the problem. And one of the bigger problems is that we have a lot of missing stairs in our hobby. And missing stair, if you don't know that terminology, please Google it. There's a really quick essay that explains what a missing stair is. It's basically, in short, we make lots of accommodations or exaggerations around someone. That person's terrible, but we make sure new people don't meet them. That person's terrible and they say those things, but that's just who they are. No, we aren't doing that anymore. Like, no. And part of the problem is a lot of the people who are these missing stairs, these people that have had accommodations made for them over time, are people with a lot of power in our game. They're people who are royal peers. They are people who are knights. They are people who are laurels and pelicans, and in some cases even masters of defense, though we try to kind of keep our house clean as we can. And so it's very hard, it's very easy to say, you know, see something, say something. But a lot of times, the people who are saying things that are very offensive or very difficult, or have people making accommodations to avoid that person, what we need, instead of more people saying, oh, that's just that person, they don't play much, it's okay, is more so to say, this is not acceptable and we're not accommodating you anymore. We are done accommodating bad behavior, and we are done making excuses and efforts to include you if your behavior and your attitude continues to be poor. And I believe that's kind of at the core of what several of you have been saying is, you know, yes, we need people to say something. We need people to get out there and stop, you know, people from being these agitators and or being these missing stairs, not agitators, missing stairs. And you know, if we can get that help, that would be enormous. We need confrontation for change. Anyone else?
The chat agrees with you, by the way.
Okay, great. I'm going to give a round of closing arguments because we're at about an hour of recorded time, a little over. And I do have 2 quick announcements before we end. So if anyone has any closing discussions or comments they want to make, please include that now. Okay, great. Thank you everyone for coming today. I do have these two final comments. The first is if you are interested, we posted a lovely paper that Ilidor worked on with the assistance of Doña Perrin and Doña Marie, and Ilidor can make that announcement.
I just I want to just correct, actually, it was Doña Perrin who was the main author of that paper, and she's amazing and does math. I do not do math. And she and I and Gia, man, I'm totally messing up
Doña
names.
Marie.
Thank you, Doña Marie, are going to, on March 4th, as of right now, that may change because time has no meaning during COVID, are planning on having a discussion much like this on that paper, as well as we might bring a couple more data, people who have more data in, to just talk about the actual data and how we've gotten it regarding what it looks like the leaky pipe problem of how we see approximately 45 to 50% of the people who start are women, and then but by the time it gets to the Masters of Defense, we are at 13 to 14%, and that is a entirely leaky pipe problem, and we're going to discuss that on March 4th in a Zoom chat much like this.
Yes, so I do encourage people to go out, read that paper. I will make it available again for people who missed it somehow. I know that Ilidor also tends to post it every year on the anniversary of the Master of Defense, because everyone needs to hear that, and everyone needs to understand that we have a very large systemic problem with the overall leaky pipe. So I wanted to make sure that we had some time to do some Q&A on that. I will be moderating that, so if you do have any input, please read the paper, please give me feedback, please give me questions for these wonderful ladies who have done all of this good research. And we also have some people who are adding new research as well. So we'll discuss that further then. So March 4th, we'll post a link for that as well. My last announcement is if Penzic 2021 does happen, the Lady Rapier tournament that Ilidor and I always co-host has been put in for, so just so you know, it will still be on the schedule. With that, I would love absolutely everyone to know we are thankful that you came out, that you asked us good, challenging questions. Thank you very much to our panelists who showed up, especially our first time callers. Thank you very much, and we do encourage you to come back for these. We'll probably try and have another one in a few months or so. We'll see what the need arises. Until then, goodbye everyone, and thank you.